Good evening. My name is Kristen Oliveri, and I'm an officer on the board of the Shrewsbury-Grafton League of Women Voters. I want to thank everyone for being here and participating in an exercise of local democracy. A special thanks to Lebeaux, past president of the Worcester League of Women Voters and vice president of the State League. She's going to be our moderator for the evening. Before Lee gets started, I want to remind everyone that the election is May 7th and that democracy is not a spectator sport. Lee?
Amen to that, right? Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me clearly? And you hear my allergies acting up for the first time this year. I'm so pleased. Okay. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. That means we deal with issues and not people. We have 14 specialist committees that operate in the state, everything from, gun control to women's reproductive rights to, various, and we have specialists who work in every one of those fields. When we get consensus from the almost 4,000 members that we have in Massachusetts, we state a policy position around various questions and issues. And it's those stated policy positions that local leagues use to define the work that they do on the local level. It allows them to take stands and the like. Gentlemen, I welcome you here tonight. It is an exercise in democracy, and you are to be commended for running for office. We need more of you, not less. As a matter of introduction, let me just say that the Grafton League came up with 2 questions, the Grafton League, so that, there wouldn't be any sort of bias on the part of the Shrewsbury League members in terms of what candidate might favor what issues. Those 2 questions were sent out to each of the candidates. I will ask each of the candidates to respond to the questions, after which we will have plenty of time for questions from the audience. Okay, we have structured this so that there should be plenty of time for you to ask questions. So as you're listening to responses, you can come up with a question. I would urge you not to make statements, to make questions. There is only a limited time when you're broadcasting or cable casting or anything else. There are start times and there are finish times, and they don't care who's talking. We could be cut off. So we do want to give as many people as possible to ask questions, okay? So if you would do that, that would be terrific. I am going to read the bios that each of the candidates sent in, approximately 150 to 200, right? Words
150.
around there, okay. And I think I got your names right. If I mess it up, please feel free to correct me. So we will, I should say that because I didn't know any of these candidates when I came here tonight, we put everybody's name in a hat, and I picked out one name for Selectmen, and that is who will be the #1 person. That's Mr. Lebeaux, John Lebeaux. And then #2 would be John Samia or Samia?
Samia.
Samia, thank you. Stephen Trotto. And then #4 will be Jony Ananth. Okay. Ananth. I got it? Good. And then we'll start with the next person. Then Mr. Samia will be #1 on the second, question, and as we go down, we'll just alternate. So let me just quickly read this. Jony Ananth. Ananth? I will, by the time I leave, I'll say it right. MD, MBA from Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, is the statewide commissioner of the Asian American Commission for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, appointed by the Senate President. He is the principal and founder of Boston Mantra LLC, a healthcare startup in Massachusetts in its incubator phase. He is also a charter member of TIE Boston, the world's largest not-for-profit network dedicated to helping startups grow, has 60 chapters worldwide. Jony is the past elected president and chairman of the board for WCUW Inc., Worcester, Massachusetts. That's a radio station with over 700 members and 120 programmers. Jony has hosted over 140 radio talk shows titled Community Matters on WCUW and streaming worldwide. And his talk show brings community people together to participate in subject forums, interviews. There are physicians, lawyers, CEOs, community leaders, and elected officials, all with past experience, and will be future guests on the radio channel. He also co-hosts several, he co-hosts an Indian music program on Sundays. Jony is a Justice of the Peace, elected town member for Shrewsbury, Deputy Sheriff Reserve for Worcester County, a Shrewsbury Constable, and a Notary Public for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Thank you for being here. John Lebeaux. Selectman John Lebeaux is 64. He attended Shrewsbury schools, grade 1 through 12, and graduated from Trinity College in Hartford. He and his wife, Debbie, another longtime resident, are very proud parents of 3 SHS grads and 2 grandchildren. For over 25 years, John worked as general manager of his family's business, Shrewsbury Nurseries. In 2009, John changed careers and was appointed town administrator of Princeton, Massachusetts. That was until his 2015 appointment by Governor Baker to his present position, which is State Commissioner of Agricultural Resources. John was first elected a town meeting member when he was 18, serving in that capacity for 35 years. Prior to his election to the Board of Selectmen in 1998, John served as a Zoning Board of Appeals member. He is the current chairman of the Board of Selectmen. John's campaign website is johnlebeaux.com, and his campaign may also be followed on Facebook. Thank you for being here. John Samia. John Samia grew up in Shrewsbury and is a proud graduate of Shrewsbury High School. He has his undergraduate degree in economics and a minor in Spanish from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And he has a law degree from the Boston University School of Law. In between college and law school, he worked for General Electric and graduated from its financial management training program, which combined 4 6-month rotational financial analyst assignments with MBA-level coursework. For over 20 years, he has been a corporate lawyer. He currently serves as Vice President and General Counsel at American Superconductor Corporation, which is located in Ayer, Mass. And he is responsible for the legal, human resources, and U.S. facilities organizations. John served 3 terms on the Shrewsbury School Committee and as a member of the 2013 Fiscal Study Committee. He has served as a Precinct 7 town meeting member for more than 10 years. Thank you for being here. Stephen Trotto. Stephen Trotto's family roots in Shrewsbury go back over 110 years. Worcester Sand and Gravel was started by his grandparents in 1910. Since his father and 3 relatives were Shrewsbury selectmen in the past, and his mother was president of many local organizations, he grew up in a family environment where business, government, politics, and volunteering were a big part of their lives. He attended Shrewsbury Public Schools and was president of his class. At 20 years old, he started his first company and has owned and managed 3 other businesses. He is the founder and former president of 6 community organizations for youth and homeless families throughout the country as well. He has volunteered for over 100 charities and nonprofits and is a Shrewsbury Town Meeting member. He currently lives next to the house he grew up in on North Street with his partner of 29 years, Bob Wiggin, and their dog, Boo. Thank you for being here tonight. All right, gentlemen. We will start with the first question that came from the Grafton League. Many communities in Massachusetts have instituted a Community Preservations Act, which generates income that can be used for historic preservation, affordable housing, and purchasing conservation land. Some Shrewsbury residents have suggested and would like to see this program created in Shrewsbury. Are you in favor of such a program? Why or why not? Mr. Lebeaux, we start with you.
I'm happy to answer the question, but I was led to believe we were all going to do a one-minute opening. Am I mistaken?
Oh, you were led to believe correctly, and I apologize. Okay then, Mr. Lebeaux, open please. And you'll have 1 minute.
Well, good evening. I'd like to thank the League for hosting this event, which allows all the candidates to jointly present themselves and their ideas to the voters. Every May, we voters face a very important decision, a decision that affects our safety, our health, our quality of life, our kids' educations, and so much more. And that is who should be elected to be Shrewsbury's leaders. How should we decide who to trust with that responsibility? I suggest the biggest issue before the voters is always one thing: leadership. I believe my performance as your selectman has continually demonstrated that I have the judgment, the experience, the temperament, the insight, and the leadership skills to continue to serve on our town's executive board. To learn more, please follow my campaign on Facebook and at johnlebeaux.com. I respectfully ask for one of your 2 votes for selectman on Tuesday, May 7th. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Samia?
Sure.
Oh, did I tell everyone to turn off your cell phones?
That's the timer.
It's mine. I can't. Okay, there we go.
Tell me when.
She's the timer. Yeah.
Mr. Samia, go ahead.
Good evening. I am truly excited about my candidacy for the Shrewsbury Board of Selectmen. Since announcing my candidacy, I have had the privilege of meeting many Shrewsbury residents who, like you, deeply care about our community. I am running for the Board of Selectmen to make Shrewsbury an even better community for all residents to live, work, and raise a family. I am concerned about several challenges currently facing our town, which include budget constraints, continuing residential growth, ongoing water issues, and the need to expand the commercial tax base. If these issues are left unresolved, the long-term vibrancy of our town could be adversely affected. My comprehensive budgeting knowledge and legal and business experience are all valuable skills that will enable me to make an immediate impact towards solving these challenges. I also have a strong understanding of the complexities of town government. My experience on the school committee, together with my legal and financial experience, will allow me to make an immediate positive impact on the Board of Selectmen, and I respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, May 7th.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Trotto?
Well, since I knew you were going to be doing the introduction, I did actually come up with an opening statement, but I wanted to start a little off topic. I've been concerned that there aren't any women running for selectmen this year. I personally tried to convince a few truly amazing women I know to run for selectmen this year, even though they would have likely gotten more votes from me. All felt the demands of their lives wouldn't let them make that commitment needed for selectmen at this time. I would love to see a majority of women on the Board of Selectmen in the future. So please run in the future. Shrewsbury needs you to run.
Thank you. Mr. Ananth?
Thank you for having me, everyone. My name is Jony, and one of the things that, unfortunately, we couldn't fit the bio into 100 words, so I just want to add something. Probably one of the most important things, because we are here with the League of Women Voters. I'd like you to know that I am the women's candidate. I am the co-chair of a group called Advise, and for many years I have participated helping women who are survivors of domestic violence. Through my work in helping people, I have been recognized by the Great Guy Award from the YWCA in 2017. I received a Certificate of Excellence from the Mass Medical Society for patient experience, and I also received a Senate citation for helping people. But most importantly, these are just examples of why I'm here. I'm here for you, for the people, and that is what this campaign is about. Your needs are what I would like to represent.
Thank you. I will repeat that first question now. You will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and Mr. Samia, you'll be the first to respond.
Great, thank you.
Many communities in Massachusetts have instituted a Community Preservation Act. It generates income that can be used for historic preservation, affordable housing, and purchasing conservation land. Some Shrewsbury residents would like to see this program created in Shrewsbury. Are you in favor of such a program? Why or why not?
Sure. 175 of the Commonwealth cities and towns have found the Community Preservation Act, or CPA, to be beneficial, as evidenced by the more than 10,900 projects that have been approved to date. Adoption of the CPA would enable Shrewsbury to create a local dedicated community preservation fund to fund beneficial open space, community housing, and historic preservation projects. Conceptually, this is good, but there are a lot of details that would have to be sorted out, including whether to exempt low-income households and the first $100,000 of assessed value, the amount of the surcharge, and what projects would be expected to be included. In Shrewsbury, here is what I see as potential benefits with the CPA. As noted during the preservation of the Housing Production Plan to the Board of Selectmen, the town has seen a decrease of about 20% of the 25 to 34-year-olds in town from 2010 to 2016, presumably due to the lack of affordable housing. This trend is troublesome because the younger families are the lifeblood of our community. We see a similar 20% decrease with 75 to 79-year-olds, so funding from the CPA could help fund affordable housing to address this migration. With respect to open space, the purchase of land could mean less residential growth and less stress on our infrastructure. With respect to historical preservation, the CPA could fund the requirements under a carefully drafted bylaw that preserves structures that have clear historical significance. So I feel that there is perspective and strategic value in the CPA, and it absolutely should be further explored and included in the conversation when identifying town priorities and goals when developing the long-term town plan. However, given that we recently asked residents to approve the new Beale School project, which they did knowing that they would be taking on a large tax burden, the new stormwater fee, and possibly a new police station, I believe that any adoption of the CPA is a longer-term possibility.
Thank you. Mr. Trotto, do you need me to repeat the question for you?
I don't. No,
okay.
Thank you. There are actually 3 items on my platform that would be positively affected by the implementation of the CPA. Building a dog park, preserving some of the town's historic homes, and finding a balance between developing more of the town and preserving land so wildlife have enough place to live in. A lot of people in town want a dog park, and it keeps being put on the back burner. If we utilize the CPA to help fund it and use a piece of land that the town already owns, already has a parking lot and facilities next to it, it would be a very affordable project. I know of the perfect location that fits the description, so I'm committed to getting the dog park passed. Despite a couple of challenges, I also support preserving Shrewsbury historical homes. Most importantly, we need more funding before we can make it work. There are many historical homes in Shrewsbury and features of historical homes in Shrewsbury that I think should be preserved. Opting into the CPA here would cover many of those costs. Preserving land for wildlife. I grew up in Shrewsbury. I grew up on North Street, which is the road I currently live on. There are only about 8 roads off of North Street when I grew up. Now there are more than twice that. There's developments pretty much everywhere. When I was growing up on North Street, we had squirrels and we had skunks and we had chipmunks and a few other small animals. and that's all the wildlife that we see. Now that I'm living back on North Street, we see deer, and we see coyotes and fox and a million turkeys and several other animals. And I think we just need to
finish up for us, okay?
We just need to find a balance between development and preserving land for animals, and the CPA would help with that.
Thank you. Mr. Ananth?
I love being from Shrewsbury. And one of the things that has been so great about this campaign is I've had an opportunity to learn a lot more about our town's history. I spoke to the Historical Commission, and I actually, and this is something a lot of our kids don't know, but General Nathan Howe's house, who was a general in the Revolutionary War, was demolished. And there are so few relics of the Revolutionary War in America. Many of them are here in Massachusetts. In fact, I also learned that John Adams first learned about the Revolutionary War at a tavern here in Shrewsbury, and he wrote about it in his diaries. These are stories that I feel that our kids should really learn and have a chance to experience, because it's important to be proud of where you're from. I certainly am very proud to be from Shrewsbury, and I would love to do what we can without infringing on people's property rights, but in a reasonable way, to preserve our historic heritage for our kids. I would also like to say that there was a study done that found that, and many towns actually do this, some towns that do have policies to preserve their historic sites actually see an increase in land values, in property values. So I would like to encourage the town to please continue the discussion on how best to preserve our history.
Thank you. Mr. Lebeaux?
Thank you. The question mentions that upon adoption of the CPA, a community can generate income for historic preservation, affordable housing, and purchase of conservation land. CPA funds may also be used for outdoor recreation purposes. I think we can all agree those are all wonderful things that improve communities. However, the question does not explain that the funds are primarily generated by means of a permanent surcharge of up to 3% on our property tax bills. And there are provisions of the law that allow for certain exemptions to the additional tax under certain circumstances. But the fact of the matter is that this would be a new, broad-based, permanent tax on our taxpayers, and I am not supportive of Shrewsbury adopting such taxes, including the CPA. I prefer the approach that we have in place, that if there is interest in spending taxpayer dollars on a certain initiative, we approach the town meeting, or in some circumstances, the voters, ask them to consider the specific proposal, and vote it up or down. That's how we've been doing it since 1727. Adopting the CPA would certainly put us in a position to fund more of these specific projects, but in reaction, would the voters be less willing to adequately support needs in public education, public safety, public works, or other existing and necessary municipal services? I did support the $5.5 million operational override in 2014, and that was a permanent increase to the property tax. It was used to support existing services, primarily education, but general municipal services as well. That was not effectively expanding government's footprint as the CPA does. It was to support existing and expected services.
All right, the second question, and we will begin with Mr. Trotto. What do you see as the Board of Selectmen's top priorities, given the pressures on town expenditures?
I think it's safe to say that our water supply is at the top of everyone's priority list. We all want clean water, and we want it now. I've spent a lot of time researching it, and the town is honestly doing everything that we possibly can to rectify the problem. I know people are frustrated. But if someone tells you there's a quick fix to the water problem, they're not being candid with you. I think we just need to be patient in that aspect. I think we also need to attract more businesses to Shrewsbury and retain the businesses that we have. I'm not a big fan of offering companies giant tax incentives to set up shop in a community, but if incentives are reasonably and well thought out, the town will benefit from the property tax, sales taxes from the business. And bring more businesses as well, obviously bring more temporary and permanent jobs. Another priority I believe we should have is expanding clean energy. Solar wind, and certainly more safer, cleaner, better for the environment, better for the health of our families, and much less expensive than oil and gas. And as crazy it is that I have to say this, our power does not go out when it's not sunny or windy outside like some have recently claimed. So we can save our planet, improve our health, utilize safer energy, and actually lower our energy costs. Even in Shrewsbury, there are people struggling to pay for their oil, gas, and electric bills. And of course, school safety is a big issue with me.
Thank you. Mr. Ananth?
Not so much about what I see are the main priorities, but what a lot of people, the people see. I feel our #1 priority is to be a very representative government. I would like to see a lot of what our people's needs are, they are addressed first. And as I'm going around talking to people, one of the primary concerns that people have is about the quality of our water. I met a family actually the other day, a senior couple, and they could hardly walk. But they leave the house to go buy water from outside because they don't trust our water supply. I also met with our water department head, and I've learned a lot about what the town has been doing to address our water concerns. Water is one of our primary issues. Another very important issue is the development of our town and the way it has grown. I grew up in this town, and where I lived, it was all farmland. But today, there are houses everywhere, over 200 of them. Overdevelopment is another issue that the people would like their government to address. Another thing, and many other things, I don't want to go too long, but I'll leave it to 3. The quality of the safety of our streets has come up quite a lot. The effectiveness of our plowing, the hazards at certain intersections and crossings, especially where there are school kids and bus stops. I have heard a lot of concerns from moms and kids about the speed of cars and the type of traffic we see on certain roads. I visited the highway garage, and I'm committed to working with them. They have actually told me that a large section of the town is actually dealt with by contractors, and they are asking for more staff. I would like to work with the town to make sure we have safe streets also.
Thank you. Mr. Lebeaux?
Thank you. When you're a member of the Board of Selectmen, there are many top priorities that board members need to consider. So in no ranked priority among the things that I'm thinking about and my colleagues are thinking about are to consider the police department facility needs, to continue addressing water issues relative to unaccounted for water, manganese, and hex chrome, to direct our budget expansion and staffing and programming needs of the fire department, of our public works and human services department, for environmental benefit and economic development, our Route 20 sewer expansion project. I'd like to take a look at improving our bond rating. If we can get that up a little bit, we save substantially on our financing costs. Like to increase the grant awards that the town receives. The municipal side received $4.5 million in grants in 2018 to allow us to do things that either would have been supported by taxpayer money or not done at all. To continue the department reorganization we have going on here in Town Hall. To always continue on economic development. to deliver a Beal school on time and on budget, and to figure out what we're going to do with the old Beal. As we recently became designated as a green community, to start implementing those goals. To consider the marijuana revenue when the dispensaries open. To consider the revenue that we will enjoy, that we will no longer be spending as much money on our retirement obligation in the next or two down the road fiscal years. And lastly, what selectmen probably hear more about than anything else, traffic. Those are my priorities.
Thank you. Mr. Samia.
Sure. Here's what I see as the Board of Selectmen's priorities. We need to work collaboratively with the town manager, other town officials, and all town residents to establish a long-term strategic plan with clearly identified priorities and goals. We need to increase economic development in the commercial tax base. 53% of the town's revenue is tied to the tax levy. The next two largest revenue sources are from state aid and utilities. The revenue of the latter is to operate the utility, and state aid has been essentially flat. To increase commercial revenue, we should consider adding a full-time economic coordinator position. This strategic investment is for short money and would pay immediate dividends, as I have seen firsthand in Air, Massachusetts. We need to sustain ongoing investment in public safety and water infrastructure. Specifically, we need to look at adding additional fire personnel and the police department's facility needs. The fire department has the same staffing level as it had in 1987, when the town had approximately 23,000 residents. The police station is almost 50 years old and at the end of its useful life. We need to support the needs of our senior community. We have 8,500 seniors in Shrewsbury. Having attended the Council on Aging's presentation of the Finance Committee, we need to look at additional services relating to social and emotional health and well-being of our senior community. And I believe that the Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services can augment our current level of services in a very cost-efficient manner. We need to maintain the continued excellence of our public schools, which means making continued smart strategic investments. The good news is that help for our budget pressures may be on the way. Why? Because the town's pension liability is expected to be fully funded in the next year or two, and a few $1 million previously earmarked for the pension could now go to operational needs, and also potentially revenues from the future sale of marijuana. In any event, these additional resources must be spent wisely and in accordance with the terms of a well-developed long-term plan.
Thank you. All right, that's the end of the prepared questions. And I will now open to the floor for anyone from the public who wants to ask a question. That mic is on, so you can come forward and speak there. And please remember, don't make statements, just ask a question, so we'll have enough time for everyone to have a chance up there.
If you can please state your name and your precinct as well.
Melissa Hollenbeck, Precinct 9. The question I have is I want to thank the Grafton League for asking the CPA question. That was actually not mine. I am proposing support of the CPA. Mr. Lebeaux, I do want to correct you. The CPA can be repealed after 5 years. And
I didn't say it could.
You said it was a permanent?
It's permanent.
I'm sorry. So it is after 5 years, and since 1920, when it started, 2000, no towns have actually repealed it. And my question actually is not only will, if we do have CPA, but what other projects for the community big picture that we see happening with possibly regional efforts? This is a question I ask almost every year. I'm from Pennsylvania. We have county systems down there. And in Massachusetts, every single little town is doing their own little thing. So what plans do you guys have for more regional opportunities?
And we'll start with Mr. Ananth, please.
I take it you have some ideas? I am committed to regionalizing our efforts, not just in preserving our communities, but in many different areas, including public health and other areas in which many towns have a little patchwork of different things that they're doing. And if we work together, we would actually achieve a better result. Yes, definitely. I am for regionalizing our historic preservation, and I am committed to preserving our history. I appreciate the remarks of the other candidates, and they made some very good points. I do feel that at the end of the day, and we can discuss this further, but my plan actually involves raising our revenue through many different ways. So I don't believe, and this is my impression, that we have to resort to taxes and debt to solve every problem. And I'm of the opinion that there are many ways in which we can consider programs such as community preservation in the context of not just how much it costs, but also what it means for our children, our seniors, and the people of our society. Please weigh the costs and benefits, not just monetarily, but in terms of our society.
Thank you. Mr. Lebeaux?
Sure, thank you. Well, first, I think we should acknowledge the many efforts that have gone on in the recent past to regionalize our government. We have a very robust public health regional model with the city of Worcester and 6 other communities. We no longer have what we had just 15 or 20 years ago with the agent here in town. We now use the services of the city of Worcester for that. We've recently started to make a transition of our animal control to a regional model with the towns of Grafton and Westboro. We do a great deal of procurement regionally, particularly in the public works area, procuring salt and sand and snow removal equipment and items. Our Veterans Services was converted over to a regional model not too long ago, also with Grafton, Westboro, and Northboro. There's been traditionally for decades public safety regional agreements relative to mutual aid of fire and police. And folks often think that public works might be a good area to do regionalism in. That's often difficult because, frankly, everybody wants to use the same equipment at the same time. So it's very difficult to share a street sweeper when everybody wants to sweep streets. Try to say that once every spring and every fall. I am interested in exploring regional dispatch. I did that when I worked for the town of Princeton. It was a huge savings for the town of Princeton. But I also want to remind folks, when you regionalize, you lose a degree of control, and there's value to that control as well. So I don't think we should just regionalize to regionalize. We have to carefully consider where those opportunities work in our favor and when we should keep them in town.
Thank you. Mr. Samia?
Sure. So one of the things that I have is what I'm seeking to accomplish is reach out to other communities and see if we can learn best practices. I think part of that is an outreach effort is if I get elected to the board, just reaching out to other members of boards of selectmen, because part of this is a steep learning curve if we get on the board. So there are certain things that we don't know, but one thing does come to mind with respect to affordable housing, because even under the CPA, question is about administration and I talked to Kristen last about this, about how would we deal with oversight because affordable housing, as I mentioned already, for 25 to 34-year-olds may be an opportunity for us to keep people in, but it's a question of how do we oversee the property, and there are regional organizations that oversee the property, so I see that as being a possibility. That's the strongest one that I see. John talked about areas that we're already doing, and I know generally that our previous town manager did reach out to other towns, and there was somewhat of a hesitancy because we were pretty costly at the time, and they weren't too anxious to regionalize or work together with us. But the main one that I see that comes to mind now is for affordable housing, to regionalize those expenses.
Thank you. Mr. Trotto.
I certainly support regionalizing our government. First, I think we should look into reforming our trash and recycling program for many reasons. And if we had to share that responsibility within the town, I think we would save a lot of funding on that. I just wanted to make one more comment about the CPA. A lot of Shrewsbury residents don't realize that we're already paying into the State Community Preservation Act, but we're not getting any benefits from it at all. In regard to additional fees, it's quite low. I believe I have the figures correctly. If you want to say a $500,000 house, it would cost you about $60 a year based on a 1% of the property tax with a $100,000 exclusion. We could also add exclusions for the elderly and low-income families. So for the cost of, you know, a small Starbucks coffee a month, we can opt into it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? And you're next after that, okay. And we'll start the answers with Mr. Lebeaux this time.
Roberta Goldman, Precinct 8. I want to ask a question about education. We just came from, another seminar and at the India Society, and education was a top issue. And even though this is a selectmen's debate, education is very much an important part of our community. I was wondering if you, there's a concern about underfunding of education by the state and throughout the state. And there is a proposal, actually two legislative proposals, one called the Promise Act and one called the Cherish Act, in which the schools are funded over and above what we call the Chapter 70 funding for necessary funds, like for added special education, for children who have immigrated here.
To the question.
Okay, and my question is, do you support those two acts that are before the legislature about the Promise Fund and the Cherish Fund? And would you promote that with the legislation, with the legislators?
Mr. Lebeaux.
Well, I'm not afraid to say when I don't know about something, and I'm not familiar enough with those pieces of legislation to make a comment. I know we have constantly a concern that legislative action sometimes might be directed to serve communities that are far less well off than Shrewsbury, and that a community like Shrewsbury could actually suffer as the result of that. So we would have to study those acts, those bills very carefully before we came to any position.
Okay, and the positions are that every community will get something. Obviously, the more needy communities.
We don't have time for an explanation. Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Samia?
Likewise, I'm not sure what the statutes say, but I am all for additional funding for schools, having been on the school committee for 3 terms. We work through a lot of unfunded mandates. If you look at the circuit breaker, for example, the state is historically was supposed to fund certain special education expenses 4 times the foundation budget at 75%. There were years we got 36%. And you never know when you're going to incur those expenses, and then you get them back in a trailing way the next year. It would be nice to see the state fund its obligations. The state has put together a statute for us to comply with, and it's left on the cities and towns to be able to comply with everything. And sometimes what would really be helpful is to take a step back and look at ed reform and look to see if it still makes sense for the 21st century or should it be changed. But that's a different discussion. But specifically for additional funding for Shrewsbury, while we do well under Chapter 70 with $20 million, any additional funding would be great, because our grant funding, for example, is also flat. We're at $1.8 million to $2 million a year, and that doesn't go up, but our costs to continue to go up. So any additional revenue that we could get from the state to fund our educational program would be welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Trotto.
I am forever with more revenue for education, but like John and John, I don't know enough about these specific programs to be really specific. So,
thank you, Mr. Ananth.
Thank you for the question, Roberta. And I should also mention that to qualify my answer, I would need to study the legislation more before committing support for or against it. My primary concern is for Shrewsbury, and in general, I am for more funding for our school system, and I'm for more programs for our students. The other day, I met some kids. I've talked to a lot of kids and their moms about what kind of schools they would like to have, and it's no secret that the high school is very overcrowded. And one of the goals, I met with Dr. Sawyer, and one of the goals is to increase the capacity of our school system. The kids were telling me that they would like to see a leadership program in their school. And I said, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. But the larger point they were making to me was that they didn't want their school to be measured only by the size of their class. They wanted it to be measured by the quality of their learning and teaching. So I am for more programs. I came across a mother, actually, several parents, actually, who have kids with special needs, and they would like to see more programming for special needs children. I feel that the most important measure of a school is not just how well they take care of their best performing students, but how well they take care of the students who need the school the most. I am for more programming.
Thank you. And we'll start with Mr. Samia this time.
Thank you, Mindy McKenzie, Precinct 10. Just want to thank all of you for running and for being here tonight. My question for you is, if you, or I've heard a lot of you mention going to the town leadership, and if you had a question for Kevin Miskar or Kristen Loss, what was your question and how it enlightened you? Your top question.
My top question, candidly, when I was considering running for the Board of Selectmen, Kevin Miskar, what his thought was on a long-term plan. I think that's very important. Historically, going through the budget process, we do it 1 year at a time. A lot of priorities get pushed out. Now, as we've all talked before, there are a lot of priorities that all deserve to be funded. But historically, we haven't taken that long-term view. And we also have not taken a step back and looked at what we're doing today and if that matches our values today. So what's important to me is not only, what's important to me is being able to implement a long-term plan. When I spoke with Kevin, he was very receptive to that idea. He's a very strategic thinker. He's been working with his departments as they develop their long-term strategic plan. We see it in pockets, where the Council on Aging is going through their 5-year strategic plan. The library has a 5-year strategic plan. What I'd like to see is a plan that brings Shrewsbury to 2030, that we have a 10-year plan that brings in feedback from all residents, that it becomes a plan that we're all comfortable with and work towards. So that was the most important for me. It was a shift in mindset that really excited me about this opportunity.
Mr. Trotto.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question again? I'm not sure I understand it totally.
If you spoke with either the town manager, Kevin Miskar, or the assistant manager, Kristen Loss, what was the question you had, and what was your top question that you asked? And
I'm not sure I would have a top question for them.
So if you did talk to them before running, that was my question.
I did not talk to them, no.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so Mr. Ananth.
Thanks for the question. Great question, Mindy. I did meet with Mr. Miskar, and I asked him how would the Board of Selectmen best be able to help him do his job more effectively. And he told me, kind of along the lines of what I was thinking, actually. He said, it would be great if the Board of Selectmen could be a good liaison between us and the people so that we can be informed by the people's priorities. And that is the kind of selectman that I would like to be for you. I would like to be a selectman that goes around and talks to people, a lot like how this campaign has been, knocking on doors, going to events, holding signs, just being there among the community. And I feel that that is what is the most important role of a selectman, really, because our town administrators are experienced. They have the qualifications to run a town. I'm not an expert in running a town, but I do feel that through communication with people, we can really run a town of Shrewsbury for the people.
Thank you. Mr. Lebeaux?
Well, obviously, my dynamic with the town manager is a little different than the candidates because I'm a selectman. I speak with the town manager or communicate with the town manager just about every day. I mean, we talked this morning. We're talking about short, medium, and long-term issues. So it can be, Kevin, what's happening today, or he wants to tell me about something that's happening today. We think about what we're going to do tomorrow, next week, next month, this year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, that's the nature of the business. We both react and try to, because a selectman has to react. We try to be proactive, but there are always things that come up and surprise us. So we've got a lot of balls in the air, and I think we've done a very good job of managing them. I do think that the Board of Selectmen presently and in the past has been an excellent liaison with the voters, considering the amount of contact I have with voters, and I know my colleagues have with voters, with residents who call us, who stop us in the supermarkets, at the gas stations, at the diners. I feel we have excellent contact and have a sense of what's going on in town, and actually that interaction between the manager and the Board of Selectmen is how we measure what our administrative values are and our political values are. What do we want to do? What do we think the people will support? What do we think the people want us to do? I mean, this is the job. This is the job that goes on every day. And honestly, I would say that if a selectman is not good at that, a selectman doesn't get reelected. So I respect the fact that the candidates are all interested in doing that, but I want to submit to the folks that that's business as usual.
Thank you.
One more. Gentleman in the back.
Thank you. Paul Schwab, Precinct 1. So the February 22nd, 2016 meeting of the Selectmen minutes show support for the master plan. Master plan, as everybody knows, is a 10-year-ish plan that is in place right now. It mentions a need for a preservation bylaw to protect historic structures. I'd like to know where the candidates stand on such a bylaw, which is before town meeting this year, and how that relates to our master plan and the implementation of it.
Okay, we're going to start with Mr. Trotto, and I'm going to ask you to answer in 1 minute because we're running out of time. I want to get one more in. Mr. Okay. Trotto?
Well, I was at the select meeting when this was discussed, and I definitely support Paul's group. I just think I think we need the CPA funding to do that, or it's not going to work. So I think that just a few things need to be worked out there. There was also a concern that, if someone was trying to sell a historic house and we were trying to, preserve it, there might be up to a year waiting period between that time. And for some sellers, that's an awful long time. So I think we just need to work out a few kinks in that plan to go forward with it.
Thank you. Mr. Ananth?
Thank you for the question. I had a very lengthy discussion with the Historical Commission, and if you look at the master plan, it says it right there that we have to take care to preserve the nature and character of our neighborhoods. I'm paraphrasing, but basically that's what it said. And yes, I am for the bylaw because I do feel that one of the things that people are very concerned about is the nature and character of their neighborhood. And even larger than that, how our town has changed so much. I would like to preserve our town the way it always has been, as a small town that we all have grown up to love.
Thank you. Mr. Lebeaux?
Well, it's no secret the position I took on this. I do not favor a demolition delay bylaw. I think it is highly unfair to property owners to tell a property owner that they may not be able to sell their house for 6 months or 12 months. I know there's been some conversation about certain exemptions in certain cases, but I don't believe that that's the right way. I'd rather not do the stick, I'd rather do the carrot. I'm not going to defend my interest in history. I think that's well known, but I just can't. It doesn't seem right to me that folks are going to be told by a government body that they can't sell their house when they want to, and I can't. I mean, that makes it a non-starter for me. As far as the master plan, yeah, I supported the plan, but please understand, no community adopts every element of a master plan.
Thank you. Mr. Samia?
So I had the opportunity to be at both Board of Selectmen's meetings when the bylaw was presented and the commission came back the second time with feedback. I think there's value to it. What I found a little bit that I'm still struggling with is what's the definition of historical significance? But what I heard from an explanation from one of the members of the committee was that this was really designed to cover not all 400 homes that are 100 years old, but it was really meant to cover that, say, 1% of truly historically significant homes. That's just the disconnect I'm struggling with. I get that there are homes here that are historically significant. I don't know if it's by doing all the paperwork necessary with the Historical Preservation Society to get accreditation, but I think there's value to that because someone who's bought a home like that is on notice what they're buying, as long as it doesn't cover every home that's 400 years. I mean, 100 years old of the 400 homes. So I think there's value. I just would like to see it a little sharper.
Thank you. And now we'll have our last question. Come on up. And we'll start with Mr. Ananth.
Hi, thank you guys. As a young person heavily involved in government and that cares about our town, I'm wondering what you would do if elected as a Board of Selectmen member to increase youth participation in government.
All right. Thank you for the question, Max.
Max German, Precinct 8.
I serve as a town constable, appointed by the Selectmen. I appreciate them for appointing me. And one of the things that, and I also served at the Shrewsbury Media Connection Advisory Board, but one of the most important things I learned was how important it is for all residents to be engaged with our town. And, you know, as the gentleman rightly said, the role of the Selectmen is to represent everyone. And I humbly disagree that everyone feels represented. There are many communities in our town who don't feel that they have a voice. To you, I say, I am your voice.
Thank you. Mr. Lebeaux.
Well, I think the government that we have, not just Shrewsbury, but the town form of government in Massachusetts is very inclusionary. I know some folks have been talking about considering what amounts to a charter change. I think a city form of government is much less inclusionary. There's much less opportunities for people to become involved. So we have a variety of town boards and committees, but we also have the elective option. We have 240 elected town meeting members, which we wouldn't have if we were a city. And young people have. I'm not the only one. I ran and was elected when I was 18. Other young people have ran and gotten elected as well. There's opportunities. We'd always welcome internships within Town Hall. And I don't know where the school department is on civics these days. I know it comes and it goes. It's tough to get into the program, but I think that's a key component to start that process, and I strongly support that being in the curriculum.
Thank you. Mr. Samia.
Sure, Max, thanks for your question. So I think it's you know, I want to take it in total because youth participation in government is also critical to the lifeblood of our community. We're struggling right now to get enough people for town meeting. When I first started in 2007, we'd have 15 people running for 10 seats. Now we can't get enough for one precinct during every, you know, the staggered period of time. What I'd like to do as part of a long-term plan is make all as part of the process to get excitement from all ages, starting at 16 or 17 years old, to hear what our younger residents feel that the community should be, as well as older residents. I'd like to see town meeting representative of our demographics now. But I think that all becoming part of the process, and I'd like to be more interactive with having the Board of Selectmen maybe do a road show, getting out to the schools, talking about what we do, how they can be involved, to shift how we're doing the process. I think there'd be a lot of excitement there to say, you're part of this, you're part of our plan, you're part of our future, and I think that would generate some excitement, knowing that what they say during town meeting or even before then is part of the solution.
Thank you. That's it. All right, now we are going to the closing. You will have 2 minutes each. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Trotto.
I was hoping no one would know. Well, thanks to Roberta Goldman, I started recruiting and training youth, high school and middle schools to work in politics, to debate adults when I was 14 years old, and I did that pretty much all through high school. So I have a lot of experience in getting youth involved, and I've also run 5 different youth organizations, some that are decades old. But yeah, I don't have any specific plans other than what I know. But I love to have youth involved in government and politics, and there's some great kids in here right now that are really smart and really involved, and I think that's awesome.
Thank you. All right, now we will go to the closing arguments, and we will start with Mr. Lebeaux. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Well, the fact of the matter is, I love Shrewsbury. I can tell you from personal experience, Shrewsbury is a wonderful town to grow up, go to public school, raise a family, work, run a business, but we can and should keep working to make it even better. The 2000s have been marked with great change: population growth, a very volatile economy, new laws, regulations, and policy questions. I'm proud to have played a role in Shrewsbury's responses to these changes. Through the board's leadership, we've maintained a community where residents and businesses receive excellent municipal services, and at the same time, an average tax bill that compares very favorably to similar communities throughout the state. While constantly controlling costs, we've built and improved many schools, our fire service facilities, our library, and our senior center, and we've taken on our water issues thoughtfully, carefully, and transparently, and are on a path to resolve them. In 2017, the board successfully accomplished its single greatest responsibility for only the 4th time in its history. It hired a skilled, competent town manager. I'm very proud of the work my colleagues and I did to bring that transition about so quickly and seamlessly to replace Dan Magado, who I'm very proud to say has publicly endorsed my candidacy, who retired after 20 years of exemplary service with Kevin Mizigar. As previously mentioned, the biggest issue before the voters is always that of leadership. I believe I've continually demonstrated to the community that I have the qualities to continue as your selectman. My extensive private and public sector experience, combined with my thoughtful, reasonable approach to problem solving, places me in a unique position to thoughtfully find the best outcomes to protect and enhance our community. To learn more, please go to johnlebeaux.com and follow us on Facebook. So I may continue to serve you, I respectfully ask that you please vote for me, John Lebeaux, for Selectman on May 7th. I thank you for your kind attention, and thanks again to the League for hosting.
Thank you. Mr. Samia.
Sure. Before I begin my closing remarks, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's candidates forum. Shrewsbury is where I grew up, where I graduated from its public schools, and where I chose to raise my family. This is where I've lived my life and followed my family's tradition of community-based public service. For over 20 years, I've been a corporate lawyer. I currently serve as Vice President and General Counsel at American Superconductor Corporation, where I am relied upon on a daily basis to provide practical, effective, and outside-the-box solutions to a broad array of complex business and legal issues. During my tenure on the school committee, I demonstrated my commitment to hard work, the ability to work effectively with other town officials, and to clearly communicate with town residents. In spite of tremendously difficult financial and regulatory times, we, as a committee, provided effective leadership and ensured that Shrewsbury delivered an educational program that our community expects, while making sure that the interests of the Shrewsbury taxpayer were well served. My experience on the school committee, together with my legal and financial experience, will allow me to make an immediate positive impact on the Board of Selectmen, on which I seek to accomplish the following goals: work with the town manager, other town officials, and all town residents to develop a long-term strategic plan with clearly defined priorities and goals, sustain ongoing investment in public safety and water infrastructure, maintain clear, concise, and open communication with all Shrewsbury residents, increase economic development in the commercial tax base, collaborate with adjacent communities to identify best practices and potential cost savings, support the needs of our senior community, and advocate strongly for the continued excellence of our public schools. From now until Election Day, I look forward to actively engaging with Shrewsbury residents, seeking their opinion, and sharing my vision for Shrewsbury's future. I am ready to bring my passion, energy, and experience to the Board of Selectmen and respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, May 7th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Trotto.
Okay, I just want to touch on a few priorities besides the one I mentioned earlier. We obviously need to implement election form in Shrewsbury. We need to build a new police station or expand and renovate the existing one. I know Chief Hester and Jim Vona definitely need more people in their departments. I was told that we have 40 less police officers on the force today than we did 20 years ago when there were much fewer residents. So I want to thank you for inviting me to your forum. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you, and I would be honored to have your vote on May 7th.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ananth.
Whatever your political affiliation, can I just say to you that let's not forget that we're all neighbors, sometimes literally. I just want to close by sharing with you what my vision is for Shrewsbury. I would like to see a town that is beautiful, attractive, that provides a home for people of all backgrounds and ages, a town that provides jobs for all income levels, especially higher ones. Our town should have excellent schools, and they should nurture growth for our next generation workforce in robotics, AI, and the genetic sciences. Most importantly, local government should support the everyday quality of life of residents, support business to thrive, and conserve the purity of natural resources for the betterment of our community. Thank you for having me today. I encourage you to go to my website, jonji.com, to learn more about me, and please support me.
Thank you very much. And please remember, for Selectmen, May 7th is your election day. And you're absolutely correct. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Now we're going to kind of rearrange things here, and we'll begin almost immediately with the Housing Authority. Welcome to this second forum, being sponsored by the Grafton-Shrewsbury League of Women Voters. This forum will involve candidates for Housing Authority. I will read an opening bio for each of the candidates, and I'll start with Brenda Brown, who is not here. She is one of 3 viable candidates for this position. However, she made plans to go to Europe well before we made the date for this. Poor thing, she had to go to Europe instead. But, you know. All right, so, and this is the bio which she has submitted. Brenda Brown, longtime Shrewsbury resident, has a fresh vision to improve housing in Shrewsbury. Having 33 years' experience serving homeowners as a real estate broker, Brenda has unique capabilities to serve on the Shrewsbury Housing Authority Board. Brenda's expertise in corporate relocation and new construction development makes her the best candidate for the board. She specializes in new construction and is a former Toll Brothers sales manager, AJ Lane Development Director of Sales, New England, Cutler Brown Development Partner/owner, and currently Brown & Brown Real Estate Partner/owner. She is responsible for over $109 million in gross sales production. Brenda is excited to have an incredible amount of endorsements for her run for office, and she hopes that you will join the others and vote for her on May 7th. Brenda Brown, advocate for senior housing, believes that together we can create new, clean, safe, smart, and affordable housing. Our next bio will be for Brenda Shea Bryant. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Beth Shea Bryant. Beth Shea Bryant grew up in Shrewsbury and attended Shrewsbury Public Schools, graduating from Shrewsbury High School in 1980. When the time came, Beth sent her daughters to Shrewsbury schools. As being a mom of a child with disabilities became her priority, Beth put her own higher education on hold. But when the time came to resume her career, she pursued what had always been her passion, caring for others. She holds a BS and master's degree in nursing. Currently, Beth works as a nurse care manager with a senior care options program, providing daily care to elders in their home. Beth is a town meeting member from Precinct 8 and has served on the Commission on Disabilities since 2014. She lives on Woodway Drive with her daughters Kerry and Siobhan, and their dogs Baxter and Juno. Beth and Baxter recently became a therapy team at Worcester Recovery Center and Hospital. Thank you for being here. Paul Campaniello. Paul Campaniello is chairman of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. He is a lifelong resident of Shrewsbury, living here with his wife and 2 children. In addition to the SHA, he is a founding member of Shrewsbury Oil Assistance Relief, serves on the Beale School Reuse Committee, has served on multiple charitable committees, and has been a town meeting member since 1989. Paul also founded a charity for women battling ovarian cancer, and it has raised over $30,000. While Paul has served on the SHA, they have built 5 new family units, launched a new website, subsidized the Council on Aging van, ensured local and military preference on their waiting list, modernized its security, and secured alternative revenue streams by marketing to cellular carriers. SHA has done this without taking $1 from the town. Moreover, while Paul has served on this board, it has returned nearly $500,000 to the town. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, we will start with a 1-minute opening, and again, blind. I picked Ms. Shea Bryant to go first.
I'd like to first thank the League of Women Voters, the town of Shrewsbury, Shrewsbury Media Connection, and all of you here today for participating in this forum. As my bio said, I'm a lifelong resident of Shrewsbury, and I'm running for a seat on the Housing Authority because as a nurse, I provide care for residents in public housing facilities across the Commonwealth. I don't see anybody here in Shrewsbury as it is a conflict of interest, but I do have the experience of going into other towns and seeing both good and bad. As a Shrewsbury resident, I want the best for my neighbors, especially our seniors and those with disabilities. I've spent my adult life caring for seniors and persons with disabilities, and I'm running to ensure the facilities managed by our Housing Authority provide clean, safe, and dignified living to those in need.
Thank you. Mr. Campaniello.
Thank you. Thanks to the League of Women Voters. Thanks for everyone for coming out tonight. Thanks for Shrewsbury Media Connection as well. Thank you all. Somebody already said democracy is not a spectator sport. For those that don't know me, I have lived in this community my entire life. I've been married to 15 years to my wonderful wife. I have 2 great kids. For those that may not know what the Shrewsbury Housing Authority does, and that's a lot, we oversee more than 235 units of elderly housing, 25 family units, and 170 Section 8 vouchers in town. In fact, we are considered to be one of the best-run housing authorities in the state, and I'm running for re-election because I don't want to see that change. I want to continue the excellence that we've provided. To that point, during my tenure on the Shrewsbury Housing Authority, we have returned nearly $500,000 to this town while increasing housing, providing services to the elder like the Counseling on Aging van. We've launched a new website, we've modernized our systems and security, and we've developed alternative revenue through our cellular carriers. Beyond that, I've served on multiple charitable organizations in town. As she said, I've been on Shrewsbury Oil Assistance Relief, a town meeting member since back in '89, the Beale School Reuse Committee, and various philanthropic host and charitable committees like the Library Capital Campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, again, I'm going to read the question which was submitted to you ahead of time. And we will start with Mr. Campaniello. Many communities in Massachusetts have instituted a Community Preservation Act which generates income that can be used for historic preservation, affordable housing, and purchasing conservation land. Some Shrewsbury residents would like to see this program created in Shrewsbury. Are you in favor of the program? Why or why not? Mr. Kemp.
Thank you. Philosophically, I support such a program, but it's not quite that simple. It's a complex issue. A program like that would have to be very carefully defined, especially as it pertains to the governance of funds. Again, this is something the Shrewsbury Housing Authority has historically done an excellent job with, the financial management aspect of what we do. Financial acumen, I believe, is a critical success factor to being on this board, and one that I take seriously. The financial governance around such a program for myself would have to be centered around the fiduciary obligations. In other words, what the town entity would collect the funds, where would they come from, how would they be used. Based on how this has been rolled out in other towns, it would essentially be a property tax. And as people in the first half cited, not all funds raised through a CPA could be used for that. And in some cases, it's only been 10% for affordable housing. The difference, we manage funds today, but the difference being that we get those funds from the federal government or the state government. I know some towns such as Amherst, Chatham, Newton, Westford, and close to us, Holliston, have adopted some acts such as these. In speaking with members of the other housing authorities, I've learned that the early results are not stellar given the cost of such initiatives. But the programs are still early. A published report has cited that CPAs have given communities the opportunity to leverage larger state and federal funding for affordable housing, and it raises awareness of local housing, and that's the good news. However, the more sobering news is that while they continue to be implemented, they remain an underutilized resource. So it's the balance of where the money comes from, how it gets managed, and how it gets properly used. Again, to conclude, philosophically, I'm supportive of such an initiative, but I believe, like any policy decision, it requires thoughtful, careful deliberation, and more importantly, it would be subject to a town vote. This is actually something that would be outside of the purview of the Housing Authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question, Ms. Shea Bryant.
Thank you. I am actually for the Community Preservation Act. I did some research. My greatest concern was funding. As somebody who works with low-income seniors on a daily basis, the concern was, would they be paying the surcharge on their property tax? To learn that they could be exempt. So it could be low-income families, low-income seniors, and moderate-income seniors. So knowing that caveat, I was able to put my support behind the CPA. CPA will give us, as stated with the Board of Selectmen, will give us monies for open space. It'll give us monies for affordable housing, for parks and recreation, and preserving our historical facilities. Near and dear to my heart is CPA funds could actually go to making historical buildings ADA compliant. So that obviously puts a smile on my face. 50% of Commonwealth cities and towns now participate in the CPA. One other big takeaway besides the ADA compliance of historical facilities is that the 40B and CPA allowing group homes, accessory apartments, locally assisted units, and units funded under the CPA would count towards the community's 10% goal. So therefore, those reasons, I am in support, provided the impact to low-income families, low-income seniors, moderate-income seniors, is that they will not be impacted by this.
Thank you. Excuse me. All right, the second question that you got ahead of time, and we will start with Ms. Shea Bryant. How do you think Shrewsbury could create more affordable housing for local residents?
Okay, I'm going to answer as without the CPA. There's a Shrewsbury Housing Production Plan that started in 2012. that already has capacity building strategies, which the Shrewsbury Department of Planning and Economic Development expanded their staff capacity throughout 2016, 2017, and now has 2 full-time planning staff under the direction of the Assistant Town Manager. There's also some zoning strategies that would allow accessory dwellings, apartment or freestanding cottage structures that could address some senior housing needs and also provide housing options for young households. A big part of this, and you'll be hearing, I'm sure, from Mr. Campaniello too, is this affordable housing trust that can help. It's been established as about $500,000 in there, and what needs to be taken forward is we need to get a board of trustees. And who would sit on that board of trustees by law? It has to be a member of the Board of Selectmen. I would like to see 2 members as Boxborough, 2 members of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority, of course, somebody from the Commission on Disabilities, member of the Finance Committee, and residents at large.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Campaniello.
Sure. To refresh, the question was, how do you think Shrewsbury can create more affordable housing? We've already discussed the Community Preservation Act, as you're aware, but many residents may not know, and Beth just alluded to it, that myself, as well as my colleagues in the Shrewsbury Housing Authority, have already been working with the Planning Department to set up a proposal for a general bylaw for an affordable housing trust. As she said, this trust was already approved, but now we need to operationalize it. And that's a litany of steps that involved operationalizing it, including setting up a board, including determining how and, again, where the funds get managed and where they come from. I think this would be an excellent program. In such a program, the developers would pay a percentage to the town for every project they worked on. Those funds would then be pooled into a trust and managed by a board that would include a member of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. That bylaw hasn't been written yet, but I've already personally written a letter to the Board of Selectmen stating my support for such an initiative. I had conversations with most of the colleagues on the board, and this is something that I've personally worked on with the Planning Department. Another way would be to seek out third-party partnerships, just like I did with the Mass Department of Public Health. That partnership yielded 5 new units on Ridgeland Road. It was something me and my colleagues were very, very proud of. It was the first such development in town in over 20 years. What most people don't realize is that Shrewsbury Housing Authority only receives money from the Fed and the Commonwealth, as well as, again, we're so entrepreneurial, our cellular business. These funds are calculated and dispersed out on a formula basis based on the number of units we have, and this funding is limited to the operation and preservation of those existing units. So in order to create net new initiatives, it does require out-of-the-box creative financial thinking and partnerships, much like the one that this board already did with the Mass Department of Public Health, and much like the one we're proposing with the Affordable Housing Trust. These are just 2 examples of times when I was able to collaborate with my board, with the municipal leaders in town, with the selectmen, using my experience and my business acumen to create new housing for the residents of Shrewsbury.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that takes care of the 2 questions that they had ahead of time. So now we will take questions from the community, if there are any. I think we're fine. Okay, I think we're fine. So let's go to the closing statements, and you will have 2 minutes. Take 2.5.
Who's going first, ma'am?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, who would like to go first? No, I'm only kidding. Mr. Campaniello.
Thank you. I would have deferred, but thank you. As mentioned, I'm a lifelong resident of this community. Community service is something that's been in my DNA. In addition to my work on the Shrewsbury Housing Authority, I've been a town meeting member since all the way back in 1989. As I mentioned earlier, I was also a founding member of a charity, a local charity called Shrewsbury Oil Assistance Relief. That was a charity whose sole purpose was to save people from running out of heating oil in the middle of the night and stopping tragedies like pipes bursting and real escalated tragedies. Additionally, I'm serving on the Bail Reuse Committee, and I've served on multiple other charitable committees. I'm running for re-election because serving the seniors and less fortunate members of our community for the past 10 years has taught me how critical it is that this position be held by someone that has compassion and has demonstrated proven, balanced leadership. I possess the 4 key skills necessary to do this role effectively, namely compassion, financial acumen, experience, and collaboration. The last one's key. Doing this job effectively and delivering the kind of results we've achieved over the last 10 years, such as new housing, new website, increased town services like the van for seniors, military and local preference, modernizing our systems and security, and delivering $500,000 to the town. All of that requires collaboration with the rest of my board, as well as town and state officials. I have gained the trust and support that of those that have seen me work hard, and I believe I've been an effective advocate for Shrewsbury Housing Authority. I'm honored to have the support of the Executive Director of the Housing Authority, the majority of my board, as well as the unanimous support of our Board of Selectmen, our State Rep Hannah Kane, and our Lieutenant Governor Campaniello. But more importantly, I'm asking for your support. I want to keep doing what I've been doing. I want to continue to advocate for the seniors. I want to continue to deliver new housing to Shrewsbury. I want to continue to enhance our systems and our security. And I would be humbled and honored to receive your vote on Tuesday, May 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shea, Bryant.
Thank you. I'd like to again thank the League of Women Voters, the Town of Shrewsbury, Shrewsbury Media Connection, and all of you for participating in this forum tonight. I, too, am a lifelong resident of Shrewsbury. My family moved here in 1971. I graduated from Shrewsbury High in 1980. Both of my daughters were educated in the Shrewsbury schools. I have deep roots in this community. I have the experience as a nurse care manager, dealing exclusively now with low-income seniors. I'm in and out of housing every day. I can bring a perspective of caregiving and experience of seeing housing in other towns to the board. I have some thoughts already as when engaging with residents about town, and the one thing that's kind of stood out to me after safety has been they can't hear the meetings. And they have every right. So microphones, perhaps closed captioning are some things that are on in my thought process, should I be fortunate enough to be elected to this position. I've served on the Commission on Disabilities for the past 5 years. In that time, we have gone from a very small board, which was rubber stamping licenses for businesses, to becoming one of activists. We've been at the farmer market during Disability Voter Registration Week to be able to get folks to register to vote. Of course, we registered all people, anybody who wanted, because it's really important for people's voices to be heard. I can bring that voice. I can, because of my experience, I can do a nice collaboration with the staff of the Housing Authority, the board, and the residents that are served. I bring a unique perspective to the board. I would greatly appreciate your vote on Tuesday, May 7th. My name is Beth Shea Bryant. If you see 3 names, that's me. So vote for 3, vote for me. I thank you very much all for your time. And I'm very humbled by the support that I've had while out on the campaign trail, and it's been wonderful to talk to folks on the door. I have to thank them as well. You'll learn a lot when you start talking and engaging with people. There's no doubt about that.
For sure. And thank you both. Thank you both for running
everyone.
and for taking part in this. Thank all of you. I'm very grateful to be here myself and to take part in this and to see the great turnout that you had. Safe home, everyone.